Welcome to another episode of Stories from the Edge of Life. We have a very special guest again today. Her name is Jessica Meaney. Jessica, would you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Hi, I'm Jessica Meaney. I am Caitlin Meaney and Gage Meaney's mom. Caitlin was diagnosed with osteosarcoma when she was between junior high and high school.
All right. And thank you for that introduction. I'm Parag Bharadwaj. I'm a hospice and palliative medicine physician in the US. So, Jessica, tell us a little bit about Caitlin's medical journey. You mentioned she was diagnosed with osteosarcoma.
Correct. And we obviously didn't realize what it was. It was misdiagnosed as tendonitis, and we went through the typical physical therapy that helped and then stopped, and went to an orthopedic doctor and did an x-ray, and then was referred down to Los Angeles to Cedars, and that's where she got her original diagnosis.
So just to be clear, that is a form of cancer. Some of our
bone
audience,
cancer.
yes, right. So what transpired after she got diagnosed?
Oh, wow. It was a real whirlwind. A lot of testing, biopsies, putting a plan together, meeting many other doctors, obviously oncologists, which she was really a part of. Every meeting that was a promise made to her was, this is your journey. We're here to support you, and you will be in every discussion. And then within 3 weeks, she had a portacath put in and was starting chemo treatment in 3 weeks, which seemed very quick.
So she was a part of every discussion.
Correct.
And very young. How did she take those conversations?
Yeah, she was probably about 13, about that age. Well, like her parents, I mean, we were flabbergasted, overwhelmed. What do we do? Trusted the doctors, had a lot of questions, and there were no wrong questions, nothing to be embarrassed about, because you're learning. So she was learning also, and we let her ask her questions first, and then filled in where we needed to with what we had questions about, I guess.
Got it. So how long was the course of chemotherapy?
She had multiple. With osteosarcoma, they tend to do some chemo at the very beginning. And then she had surgery on her arm and shoulder where they took out the tumor. So part of her upper arm, and then they did a complete total shoulder replacement because it was so close to the shoulder joint. She had that done in November, and then she was back on chemo at the end of November to finish the cycle.
All right. So chemotherapy and surgery, and then chemotherapy and then more again
after. Correct.
All right.
Everything, typical chemotherapy side effects, but she managed all of that very well. And it ended in February or March was the first cycle.
So all along this time, the hope was to get a cure?
Correct. And there were some spots. Osteosarcoma likes to go to the lungs. There were a couple spots, but nothing big, and they stayed the same. So also in Southern California, everyone has spots on their lungs, I guess, that show up. So it was a concern of, do you go after them? and do surgery or not. And we kind of chose to wait.
Got it. So once the surgery was done, she completed her chemotherapy. After the surgery, was she given a clean chit of health?
At that point, it would be surgically cured. And she went back to school in April to finish her freshman year of, that was about 3 months of school.
And what transpired after that medically? Just regular checkups?
It's the usual checkups. She did obviously have to do a lot of physical therapy because a lot of her deltoid was removed. So trying to build up the muscle so she could use her arm correctly. Yeah, it was just a lot of follow-up visits every month for a while. And then about a year after, the spots on the lungs started growing. And then she had to go in for she went in for her first thoracotomy. But there were discussions of other treatments. There was going in with a scope was an option. We went and talked to a surgeon about doing that, and he seemed very confident. So she had both scope or thoracotomy as choices, and she was trying to decide which one she wanted.
So what did she choose in the end?
Well, she talked to a lot of people. I didn't realize how many people she spoke to, but she would go over scenarios with people. And her brother said, go big or go home. So she decided, let's go with thoracotomy. It would be more thorough because then they could check the whole lung and not just go for those spots. And that was her first thoracotomy out of, I personally lost count how many she went back for. It was at least 7 on both sides. Well, more like, I think it was probably 5 on one side and a couple on the other.
Wow. So that was over what duration of time? Just approximately.
Years. Probably 4 years, 3
4
years.
years. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the 3/4 year time period, what transpired then?
She did go on a couple different, once we discovered that the lungs, that the cancer was growing in the lungs, she did try other chemotherapies. Obviously they didn't work because it kept coming back. She did start a clinical trial March of 2020. And she was on that when she passed. So that wasn't, they were trying to obviously buy time, and that wasn't, she was very thrilled to be on a clinical trial. She thought that was kind of neat that it wasn't FDA approved and was doing something that might help others too.
So all this while, when she's having all these procedures done, I'm assuming she's going through some chemotherapy treatments, and then she finally got on this clinical trial.
In school, graduated with her class on time.
So she was keeping up with all her academic
commitments? All the academic, absolutely. Applied to colleges, was accepted. Actually went to college. She was in our area, we have a medical explorers program for kids that are interested in going into the medical field. They meet at a hospital, shadow doctors, and learn how to do CPR, train other people in CPR and things like that. and she was actually one of their founding members in that. So she was volunteering with them for quite a bit too. So she was very active. She was a marching band for 2 years. So yes, very active. Hard to keep track of her.
All right. So as she was doing all these other things while she was going through treatments, she got herself on a
And
clinical trial.
surgeries.
And then what happened? What transpired then?
It's a bit of a whirlwind. There was, how did it really start? She
That's
was
okay. You sorry, go ahead.
she was coughing, and it started sounding really odd, and we went down, and they discovered that the tumor started growing into her trachea, and that's what she was coughing and blocking her airway because she would start wheezing. So they were going and doing surgery trying to open up her airways, and they started doing a light therapy where they put light down there to kill the cancer cells, and they started liquefying and not dying, and it was filling her lungs with fluid. So she asked to be put on the ventilator at one point, when they were discovering what the options were, and she was just finally realizing that it was too much to breathe. So she asked the doctors to put her on a ventilator.
Got it. So what? How? I'm sorry.
I didn't make the decision. She did. At this
Yeah.
point, she's 18 also. So we're dealing with adult pediatric, which is a very muddy area. But so she asked, and obviously they did put a ventilator.
And how long was she on the ventilator?
Only maybe 3 days.
And so was she unconscious, unresponsive during that time?
At one point, when you become ventilated, or when they ventilate you, they do try and obviously put you under, so it's a much easier process. It seems like she was a bit of awake for part of it, because she was out, and then all of a sudden she started making a motion to write while she was laying down, and we gave her pen and paper, and she would write notes to us. And then we graduated to a dry erase marker and whiteboard, and she would write to the doctors, "Don't do that again," because I guess her arms were paralyzed, but she was awake and couldn't move her arms, and she definitely did not like that. So she explained to them, "Don't do that again." But she would tell the nurses when she needed suction in the like on the ventilator, so she was able to communicate with everybody. Then she started sitting up, and she was doing homework, and her dad and brother came down, and she was watching Friends and talking to the nurses and telling them what she needed and doing homework
On the ventilator.
on the ventilator. And the doctor
Amazing.
came in, and her thoracic surgeon, and looked very puzzled, and was looking at the IV pole and looking at me, and he's like, "I don't understand how she's doing this." And I'm like, "I don't know what you're saying." And he goes, "Those drugs that she is on, she should not be functioning awake or talking or anything, and she's on her iPad doing homework." And I'm like, I don't know what I didn't know what to say. I'm like, "Well, that's Caitlin. I don't know what to say."
Sounds like she was very committed.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I think this probably took her by surprise as much as it did all of us, because quite soon after that, it really spiraled. It might have been, it was probably 2 days. I don't think it was that night. Again, I'm a little off on timing. But I think it was probably 2 days later that the doctor came and said that she didn't think she'd make it through the night or till morning, which was again very shocking because it was like she was just up before. And they did have to sedate her more because she was fighting with the ventilator. And then that morning she passed. So it was very quick.
Yeah, it seems like it
Another
came as a
role.
surprise. Yeah, it came as a surprise, but it wasn't a surprise because over time
uh,
things were progressing, and but at the same time she was so awake and with it.
in dealing with it. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was thinking back now, it was the beginning and the end were both whirlwinds, I guess. Yes. Kind of
Yeah.
interesting.
So yeah, thanks for sharing the medical journey that she went through. She seems like a very positive, driven person, who went
Yeah.
through so much at such a young age. Can you tell us a little bit about, her as a person and how she was able to cope with these situations? And from what I've heard, she was very friendly. And you did mention to me on a previous conversation that there was this one moment that was a turning point for her.
Well,
Would you mind
looking
sharing
back,
that?
I couldn't pinpoint when this was, but definitely looking back, um, there was a switch, a change in something. Um, whether she got more comfortable with herself, or realized that I don't know how much longer I have and I'm gonna go out with gusto or live how I want to. I'm not sure. Because the beginning of chemo was very hard, lost a lot of weight, lost her hair, went to high school with no hair or very little. I mean, very little hair. Um, as a freshman, that's really hard. And she had long red hair. Um, so I don't know how she did it. Um, but she was very open and would educate people on what she had. In her freshman year, when she went back, they had to do a report on illnesses, and she did osteosarcoma, and she used her own x-rays and showed him her scar and explained what it was like, and her teachers were flabbergasted. um and then her sophomore year, she had an English teacher that asked her to write a essay for a local cancer support group, and she did, and was it Dear Cancer, and she won the award, and I think that was maybe very cathartic for her to write down what she was going through, things that she couldn't say or didn't want to say.
Right, and you've shared that essay with me, and we will share it with our audience in due course once we have it narrated. So watch out for that link. Um, you know,
I learned a lot through that essay.
so did I. It was definitely eye-opening and very touching. She really had a way with words, for sure.
Oh no, she was a writer.
Right.
No clue. It was like, oh my gosh, this is really amazing. So extremely proud on that one.
Right.
Didn't get that
And
from me.
I am not sure if I will accept that, but we'll have another side conversation on that topic. So let's talk about you mentioned she initially, when she was going through these treatments, she was going for a cure, and then
Absolutely.
the cancer came back. So and then she was just trying to prolong her life with all these treatments. Did you see a change in her, in her approach to life or in approach to others?
I would say in life, it didn't seem like things would get her down. And if it did, it would be for just a short time, and then she would pull herself back up. She liked to help others. I think that was always in her. I think that was always really in her. She was always a people person. She just oozed confidence.
While she was going through all these difficult situations, and I didn't realize that she actually participated in the decision making right from the point of diagnosis. So I
Yes.
know she gave you a gift. You gave a gift to the family in filling out an advance directive in terms of what her treatment preference would be. So would you elaborate a little bit more about, how, what was the process that she went through in making certain decisions, and if she included you or not while she made those decisions?
Um, Social workers and her doctors, child life at Cedars, we've had, after she was 18, had a bunch of meetings, and I'm pretty sure they knew something we didn't. Um, the way they were kind of steering us in areas, and they kept talking about advanced directives, especially being 18. And we finally said, fine, we'll do it. And they gave us a booklet that they had. And we all sat down as a family and filled it out. It's obviously something no one ever wants to do. But it was very easy. The form that they have was a very easy form, asking you questions and not just saying, I don't even know, whatever was in my head. It wasn't on the pages. It was a very easy form to go through. So we did it as a family, and it was a true blessing, because I had it with me and would read it to the doctors when they would ask me questions, and Caitlin couldn't answer. And it was not many days that she couldn't answer, or because she would tell them yes or no. A question came up about feeding tube, because we were getting to the, I didn't know and don't know the whole thing about ventilators, but after a certain point, obviously you're not eating and you do need food to sustain. So there was a talk about feeding tube, and there was a thing in the advance directive about that. So I would open it up and read what she wrote and said, is this still going with her wishes? And we all agreed yes, and then would proceed. So it was a true blessing. And even after she passed, she did write what she wanted. And it was a good thing, because we never would have thought that. So it was, again, a blessing.
Yeah, I'll just are you okay for us to continue?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. So I remember I was taking notes when we first spoke, and you said, that you took a lot of weight off your shoulders uh, by completing that document and sharing her wishes, so that she gave you a guideline as to what decisions needed to be made in times when she was not able to make them for herself.
Correct. I mean, communication was her big thing. She wanted to be able to communicate with people, which obviously the advance directive allowed her to communicate her wishes. But it was even more than that. Like I said, even after she passed, we had some kind of a guide what to do, what she wanted. She wanted to be somewhere where people could visit. I never even thought of that, but so we could read it and go, okay, she wanted a celebration. Okay, so we had some idea of what to do.
So you mentioned she wanted a celebration. Celebration of what?
Of her life, what she did, what she was able to accomplish in 19 years, 18 years.
Yeah, I'll never forget what you said, that she was a force to reckon with.
Yeah.
And, it says it reflects in what you've been sharing about her. If she were here with us right now, what would she tell us in terms of how to live our lives?
Do everything. Don't be afraid. Help each other. She did do that in the hospital with other patients that were getting ports or coming in and kind of scared or having treatments, and kind of explain what would be going on or how great the portacath was. Helping just even adults in the cancer center find where they needed to go, or just help each other.
So she was a patient herself, and she was helping other people.
Yes.
Yeah, a very big heart.
Yeah, she did.
And I recall, like, her big thing was living life in the moment, right?
Yes. We kind of had to, because with chemotherapy, sometimes you feel good and some days you don't feel so good. So when you don't feel so good, that's when you go and do things. So absolutely.
What an inspiring person, what an inspiring life. Anything else you want to share with us as a parting note before we wind up this interaction?
You can really do anything. I think that's it. You can choose to do what you want. You can choose to curl up in a ball, pull covers over your head. Not a bad thing all the time. A couple hours a day, but you know what? Pull the covers off and go have fun. Go do whatever you can do. I think that's it. Yeah. Pick yourself up. Dust yourself off.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. So we'll wind up this interaction. I can't thank you enough, Jessica, for your courage to share a glimpse of Caitlin's life. Like I said and shared with the audience, we will be getting that essay up in a separate video in due course. So keep an eye out for that. I just can't thank you enough. Thank you very much for sharing your
Thank you for asking.
All right, we hope to see you again on the channel soon.
Anytime.
Thank you.
You're welcome.